Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. Sorry we're a little late. You can blame Ray, as per
It's actually
usual.
very true. I feel terrible. You guys do all this work and just the raw panic. What are you
Ray,
doing?
your only job is to just show up.
It's really not a tough job. It's not.
I thought you were late
What
because
a-
you were grabbing an energy drink. And then we were talking what everyone's energy drink of choice was. So
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
that'll
Yep.
be our
Boy.
icebreaker today. Put in the chat your energy
Energy
drink of
drink of
choice.
choice.
Or the icebreaker is how do you make sure that you see the appropriate meeting invites? What's the best way you do that?
Don't have a spam blocker.
So bad. I love the disclosure of all the AI bots, by the way. It's like
It's so annoying.
it went from being niche and cool to like, and you get it from a branding perspective. They just need to tell you if somebody else is doing this technology. Be like, hey, I'm just letting you know I'm taking these notes. But then when there's 19,000 of them, you're like, I hate you. Why are you doing this? You're
That just means they
ruining
want to
the,
watch it later in slow motion. Like stop it, watch it, stop it, watch. That could be a good thing.
yeah, it could be.
Well, we'll go ahead and get started here. If you're not sure why you're here, we're going to be talking about the billing best practices white paper we released last month with Brad and Deb's amazing advice, industry knowledge, feedback. So super thankful for them to help us put together this paper. I think it was something that was super helpful to a lot of people and is kind of an underserved topic in the industry. So I will let our panelists introduce themselves and then we'll kind of go ahead and get into it. So Deb, we'll start with you for those. I'm sure everyone knows
Oh,
everyone, but
yeah, no, thank you. Glad to be here. So happy, what is today? Thursday. Oh, wow. Okay. Happy Thursday, everyone.
mhm.
Deb Newell with Real Time Consulting Services. I do executive consulting in the property management space. As Ray knows, I love maintenance. So it's my background. Keep it short, sweet, to the point.
Awesome. Perfect. Brad?
Yes, my name is Brad Johnson, CEO of a company called ProfitCoach. Been around for a little bit in the industry, former PM operator. I also love maintenance. I probably don't love maintenance quite as much as Deb loves maintenance. I do think that she gets the most loved maintenance award. But I think that maintenance billing process is much cooler than it sounds because you're probably losing money because yours sucks. Because most of the time, well, it's one of those things. It's like it's so unsexy. Like, let's talk about the process of maintenance
Right.
billing. Then you look at the numbers and you're like, oh, I could actually make tens of thousands of more dollars a year if I didn't suck at this. And then
Yeah,
it's sexy.
I think the accounting piece is what scares people, Brad, in general.
Mm.
Yeah,
And then
agreed.
Ray, since you were late, you'll be last to introduce yourself.
Great. I'm not really into maintenance. It's never been a
Oh,
thing for me.
wow.
So my background, by the way, engineer by trade. I was in operations for a long time, and joined in with Property Meld, helped start Property Meld back in 2015, and just basically trying to figure out how do we make this an engine that is controllable, optimizable, much like I think a lot of the other industries have kind of figured out how to do. And so this one is insanely hard. Um, and super excited to
Mhm.
chat and brainstorm with some of the greatest minds in this business. So
Absolutely. So to kind of set the stage of what we're going to go through today, really want Deb and Brad to share their expertise, what they've seen, what they've learned, and then towards the end, we'll kind of have Ray talk a little bit about what we're doing here at Property Meld to kind of help facilitate this convoluted, difficult process. So, Deb, I'm going to start with you. You've obviously worked
Okay.
with so many property management companies throughout your time in the industry. What do you think, or what does the typical billing process look like when these clients walk in the door?
Well, I think it's not just one process. I think it's like three or four internal, more like informal processes running in parallel, depending on who's handling what. So I think that, vendor invoices are getting approved by whoever's available or not getting approved at all. There's no standardized rule set. I think markup application, if there's any, depends on memory. There's no systems in place, so that's inconsistent. I hear a lot of, well, we don't know really how to track all of this, and it's just a lot of miscommunication on when things are getting completed. And there's usually no reconciliation step that kind of checks whether or not every work order actually is generating a bill. So what I see a lot when I start working with a company and I'm focusing on their maintenance department, their division, and I'm looking at the work orders, I'm looking at kind of the status of where each work order is in the process, and then how long it's taking to even get to the invoicing. And to me, when I see more work orders in like this pending status or some open status, and nothing's gotten to be billed, and it's months, and I do mean months for some that are behind, it's a concern because I look at it as money lost, potential money lost to a company as an opportunity. And if you think about it from an owner standpoint, are you really going to go back to an owner, even if the vendor is delayed? Because we know vendors don't bill on time for whatever reason. But even when they're delayed, from the owner standpoint, you're going to send a bill 2 months, 3 months later. It doesn't feel right. And as an owner, I would be like, that why are you sending this to me now? Like, they try to budget as well. We should be better at doing something like that. That's what I see a lot.
So,
Deb, do you think, by the way, can I ask a question, Molly?
Sure.
Sorry.
That's fine. Already off schedule. No, go ahead.
Yeah, like you shouldn't give me an outline. No. Deb, and Brad kind of mentioned it, is it because there's like a proverbial gun to the head when an open maintenance request is open? And so it's like there's very great rigor around the execution of a maintenance repair. And then the gun to the head doesn't happen until something really bad goes poorly, and it's kind of sometimes rare, not really, or somebody like Brad comes in. Is it because there's like not like something that's staring at him every time from an accountability standpoint? Like there's nobody screaming at him yet.
Maybe so, but the interesting thing is it is staring at them. They just are so busy with the first part of the work order, which is that triage and intake. Right? There's so many work orders that are needing attention. I mean, if you think about maintenance coordination, it actually is very, very busy. I've got work orders coming in today, but I have work orders from yesterday and from last week. So I have to remember not just to triage today, I've got to remember to follow up on where the status is on something from last week or yesterday. It piles up. So for me to think about an invoice coming in from a vendor is not what I'm thinking about at all. That's just, it's the last thing on my mind. So there could be a million recommendations of what we should do. Calendar this for a weekly activity, maybe a monthly reconciliation activity, assign somebody specific, or if it's the same person because you're not a huge company, there does need to be some time blocking set aside for invoicing and following up, because we do have to chase some invoices from vendors. But what we really should be doing, and I think Brad can speak to this more as well, is these KPIs of don't let things sit open for a certain amount of time. We really need to be on top of that a little bit more. Don't let things sit open for longer than 30 days in any status. And then particularly if the work has been done, then we need to do the billing piece, because that is this potential of really missing money that's left on the table. And I've heard it. I know we all have. Oh, this vendor just invoiced me. It's been like 5 months. Well, maybe we should have a policy in place with our company that maybe we don't pay invoices that are 5 months old. I mean, we want to be honest and ethical, yes, in our dealings with them. But at the same time, we have to set some boundaries for our vendors as well. And I want to pay them, but I don't want to chase them. So it is a little bit of, trust me, it's so much easier said than done. I understand that, because in the moment it's a lot, but I think in the moment, Ray, it's everything before billing that everybody's hyper focused on.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
So
yeah, and I would say you don't lose when you have all of those delays and you're not tracking those KPIs and you're not up on your work orders over 30 days or over 15 days or whatever it is, you don't lose the legal ability to collect that money, to charge it, to, to receive it, but you do lose the credibility with your owners.
Yes.
Kind of like what you
Agreed.
said. Yeah, something that happened 3 months ago that you just now got to the place where they can, they can pay the vendor and clear out the invoice. They've moved on. Like, most of them aren't thinking about their properties every day, and they're certainly not thinking about their properties with a work order from 90 days ago at a specific property today. And so they're like, what is this? I thought I paid this. How come this is just coming up now? Sure, it still can be settled, but you just lose all of the credibility and the momentum you have that that if you are able to capitalize on it, when it's like, yeah, like you said, usually the work order process is better than the billing process. So the work order comes in and it gets triaged. We knock it down. We get it closed out. Everything's done. That's the moment that you're like, all right, we've got the victory. Let's get this paid. Let's get this done. But when the rest of it drags on, then all the questions come in, all the doubts, and then you start to lose your credibility with your customer, and that's when you're in a bad spot.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
That was one
I
of
was
like,
just
no,
go ahead.
You done.
Okay, sorry, Ray. No, but I do want to add one thing to that. I think this comes into this, what a lot of people don't like in property management is conflict management, essentially. And that conflict comes from situations that he just described, right? So nobody wants to have this conversation with an owner 3 months later about something that they should have been responsible for or accountable to and should have been billed sooner. And so we're apologizing more than we are managing.
I think it was one of the things that was most was a most kind of profound kind of punch in the mouth from that white paper too, was that credibility loss on the owner side. I felt like that is probably has more of a cost, other than the massive amount of money we're going to talk about leaving on the table and all that, is like, it's harder to do it, but that's everybody understands the constraint of the investor relationship right now with costs and inflation and all that sort of stuff. And I know you called that out, Brad, as well, but that was kind of what really kind of punched me in the mouth on that white paper.
So we talked a lot about, kind of where these inconsistencies come from and the impact of them. And Deb, I think that's a great point about conflict management. Do you guys feel like operators aren't aware of the impact of the money they're leaving on the table? Like, is there a gap in understanding, or do you think it's solely like, I know that this is an issue, but I don't want to deal with the conflict with my investors?
I think it's all of the above.
Yeah.
I think, the problem is a part of it. This is a good example. I'm working with someone right now, and it's this, I feel bad if I charge them, even though it's in their contract to charge them, let's say it's 10%, just to make it easy, 10%, they feel bad. But then I break it down for them going, well, how long did this whole thing take? What's your time worth? And by the way, you have to employ people to handle this. Like, you're paying for someone to not just triage, but to the whole life cycle of this process. And you're incurring that expense and recouping nothing. And sure, it says in your contract that you coordinate and facilitate maintenance, but at some point, some things are out of scope. And so some people will be like, well, maybe I'll just mark it down to 5. Then it just becomes, I think it's this inconsistency. Or they don't even do it at all. I guess that could be it. It's a silent write-off. They just, conveniently forget to do it.
What's crazy is that's not where the money is to be saved for the investor anyways, is out of your pocketbook. Because I think that's what you're kind of saying, Deb, is like, it's basically out of my pocketbook into your pocketbook. And it's like, there's so many other wasteful moments that billing should, in general, help us solidify and find out that we go and attack together. That is money that is being wasted from your pocketbook and my pocketbook. Instead of being like, I feel bad because I do care about my clients and I love them and I want them to be happy in business here. I'm going to open my wallet, take it over here. And it seems like it's the wrong place.
But you just said the word. It's still a business. I mean, we do want to have there's a lot of companies in the world today that do a very good job taking care of their clients, and they still run a business. We are
Right.
still a business. We're not a charity. And so we do need to operate like such and not let owners dictate the rules of the engagement.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's good. I think there are two concepts when you have, and I'm sure Deb does the exact same thing with her clients. Like when you encounter those people who say, "I feel bad, it just doesn't feel right. I don't want to have that hard conversation." You have to think back to two things. The first one, and we just go back to this all the time in our consulting, which is, what do you want as a business owner? There's a lot of answers to that question. I'm certain that one of those answers is a dollar amount. It's not a nonprofit. You want to make a profit. You want to provide for your family or for your employees or whatever it is. There's a dollar amount associated to your goals. Most of the time, the delta between the dollar amount you're making and the dollar amount you want to make, there is a component of that is maintenance related. Like 95% of the time, some of the money, maybe a lot of the money you're leaving on the table is on the maintenance side. And then you go over to the value creation side. Okay, why is that? Well, it's not because you have the ability to stiff your owners with a fee that they'll have to pay because you're the only shop in town or you're the best shop in town. It's because maintenance creates tremendous value. You guys graciously let me speak at Meld at MX Summit basically every year. And I feel like I say the same thing every time, but every time I feel like people need to hear it, which is that maintenance creates value. Maintenance is a profitable business, not just a necessary evil. It creates value for residents. It creates value for owners. It creates value for vendors. So when we're going to our owners and saying, or our vendors, and whomever it is that we're monetizing, we're starting with a value creation argument. Here's what my management, and I'm sure we're going to get into this later, so I'm just going to hop into it now. Here's what my management fee is for, right? It's for basically accounting. It's for fiduciary responsibilities, rent collection, owner distributions, things like that. Maintenance happens, it happens differently between properties. It happens differently between owners, between tenants. Every time a maintenance request happens, a work order happens, or a turnover happens, there is a value creation engine that we provide as property managers to solve that problem. That's not only do we have an expense associated with that we must cover, but we also are creating value in that process and have the right to charge a fee and be monetized and be able to monetize that value. So the thing that I always come back to when people are having these mindset issues is what's important to you as a business owner, and how does this relate to your financial goals? And then how much value are you creating in this process? And how can you appropriately monetize that value in a way that's really actually fair to everyone, including yourself and your family?
I feel like there should just be this big amen that just
Yeah.
generates across this screen right now. The heavens are opening and angels with cherubs are coming down. That was good. No, he's 100% correct.
When I interviewed Deb to kind of help me put together this paper, we talked about that mindset issue and why it can be difficult to have these conversations with your owners. And I can assume that sometimes that hesitancy comes from, like you're talking about, Brad, I don't feel like I have a great process in place, so I struggle to defend it. So Deb or Brad or whomever, in your, tenure of looking through all these processes, where do you see these breakdowns in billing typically happen, and where do you see these losses coming from?
The beginning. I think it's they don't have a process. I think people Brad could probably say this because he sees this as well on the accounting side. I think they treat accounting for the most part for property management companies is not their forte. It's not their strength. And understandably, they're probably getting into this business for a very different reason, not to say, oh, I can't wait to do accounting. So I think it's this haphazard process of, okay, a bill comes in, I maybe check it and pay it, and then it's out of sight, out of mind. There's really not a lot of thought into an actual process of what that looks like, who should be, covering it, paying attention to it, how it should come in. A vendor, if they're sending in an invoice, I'm thinking, whoever is the person who dispatched the invoice, the work order should look at the invoice. Let's first off verify that it's right and accurate. Is this exactly what was to be done? What I asked them to do? Are they overcharging me? Are they, did they miss something? It could, that's kind of pass number one. Okay, that looks great. I'm not asking that person to pay the bill. I'm just asking them to review it, because keep in mind, accounting, if you have an accounting department, doesn't know really anything about maintenance. So they're just going to pay the bill. So somebody first needs to make sure it's okay. So it's that check and balance. So, yep, checked it, really looked at it, understood it. Labor looks right, materials look right, etc. Now it goes to accounting. So there really should be these set steps in place. And I mean, that's hardly ever done.
Yeah.
Maybe
One thing on that real quick, and then Ray, I'll go back to you, and I have some other thoughts as well. But Deb, one thing you said that struck me is, I think it is true some of the time. It depends on the accountant. Accountants do one of two things. They either pay everything in front of them because they're like, this is my job,
right?
I have an invoice, I have to pay, or they do what the accountant did at the firm that I ran, which was they're so risk averse, accountants just by nature, they're process focused and risk averse. So when they see an invoice and it doesn't have a paper trail, they go hunt because they
question
are so
everything.
They question everything, and they become private investigators. And they spend half of a day, I'm not joking, half of a day on a work order to make sure that they are not going to get a call, because they're risk averse, that they are not going to get a call from an owner that says, I never approved this. So they're back and they're hunting and they're getting receipts and they're doing all of the investigative work in the PMS.
Which is really not their job, but yes,
it's not their job. It's not their job. It's not their job at all. So it's interesting to me that like they kind of break down into like box checkers. And I can say this, I mean, I own a company full of accountants. Like I love these people. But they're either box checkers or they're risk averse investigators.
I love, so the thing that these two, by the way, it really does seem like it comes down to like ownership, because accounting is going to be the one that investors, right? Like call back, why this, whatever. And like, you need an ability to defend. And really is the thing that ownership has not been put on maintenance, that the expectation is that you do X, Y, and Z before. And so with that lack of ownership, is the accounting team absorbing that unnecessarily, wastefully, and instead we should be sitting there going like, by the time, and again, in the white paper, there's such a good information on, I forget what you called it. It was like something around the pre-flight brief or something.
Pre-flight brief.
It's like your job is this, and if accounting doesn't see it, the coordinator failed, right? Or the maintenance coordination failed. Your job is not done until you got the financial information, like in whatever. And that way you're taking away the investigator job that's wasteful, expensive, often incorrect, because Deb, you're 100% right. They don't live in maintenance every day. They're not even the ones that did it. And so does it come down to like just an ownership thing? We're just not expecting that process to have ownership up to all the way to a bill creation where accounting's whole job is to be like, okay, I got funds, pay.
Check, pay.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think historically maintenance coordination was light enough where it was, a phone call, a vendor dispatch, and then you folded that into like some base fee that felt reasonable. But I think the scope has grown. As business grows, the scope grows. Coordination now includes like vendor management, scheduling, following up, invoice review, owner communication. It is a lot. And I recognize that, but it does come down to the ownership. It really should have a check and balance. You shouldn't have, in anything, you really shouldn't have one person doing and approving all in one and paying, right? Essentially. So, but to Brad's point for accounting, which I've seen both sides, yes, it's very frustrating, because actually then the flip side of that story then, Brad, is the property managers or the maintenance coordinators are angry at accounting because they're like, why are they in my business? And I'm like, because you didn't do your job. So then it's like, if you don't want them in your business, then do your job and let them just pay the bills and how they come in. So.
And it's not about like attacking coordinators. It's about an expectation of the process, right?
Exactly.
The process should do this. And I think back to even kind of the earlier conversation, Deb, about, the clients that you're working with, and they're basically proverbially pulling money out of their wallet and giving it to the investor because if that part of the process is not in there, how else is financial waste to be captured? Because the one who's going to find it is the one coordinating the repairs, right? Like, that invoice is bonkers. Why is that many hours? Or like, hey, where are the hours on this? Like, you did a job when I know is like 4 hour job and I don't see any time. Like,
Mhm.
it does seem like that's the place where they could actually save the investor money at the same time of making sure it doesn't like fall all the way through. Accounting's not going to be equipped to do that necessarily, or
And
less ill-equipped.
we're talking about everything that's behind a desk in an office. Think about all of the work that companies do outside of that office, meaning I'm going to go now check on the work, or I'm going to drive by because an owner asked me to, or I'm going, those are all done for free, if you want to say it. Like, there's no cost incurred with that, but we do it because we haven't really set the boundary of that's outside the scope. This is what it's going to cost. Again, these are like just hard conversations that people haven't thought of ahead of time, but they all add up. And it is all, whether it's a maintenance related job or a property, like however you want to structure it, there's still, if it's time outside the office and it is related to a project that's going on for maintenance, that's costs incurred.
Yeah.
I've got to
And
say, I love how much everyone's like jumping in. You can tell this is a really juicy topic. Brad, I'll let you share what you're going to share. And then I want to go into kind of this pre-flight checklist we keep talking about so everyone knows what we're
okay.
saying.
Sure.
Okay. I can't let the moment pass without talking about DLER, because
Mm-hmm.
you asked where maintenance building losses show up, and where it shows up is a low DLER. So for those who don't know, and I don't know how anybody would not know because I just talk about it incessantly, but that's labor efficiency ratio. So what we're talking about here is the ratio between revenue and direct labor expense. Every property management company basically that I've ever seen, your largest expense line item is going to be direct labor. Certainly in a maintenance department, that's the case, right? You've got technicians, you've got coordinators, you've got technicians specifically on the direct labor side. And so what happens is the losses start piling up because the expense side is constant, right? You've got technicians going out every day, and they are generating or theoretically generating, you could say, a certain amount of revenue per day, per work order, whatever. The constant is you're always paying them. They're putting in their hours each week. You're paying them no matter what revenue they generate. So if you're not billing properly and your billing process is slow, time value of money, right? Like a dollar today is worth more than a dollar 90 days from now, or you're not billing at all, or you're doing something that I see all the time, which is playing favorites with whom you charge a markup and who you don't. But, also known as the people who aren't going to give me any fuss if I charge a markup, I'm going to charge it. People who are going to call me and demand an explanation, I'm not going to charge it. I mean, you paid your technician, so that's a loss. That's a net loss, and that affects your DLER. And nothing is more correlated to profitability in property management than your labor efficiency ratio. So, for the sake of your DLER, you have to have a good process. You have to bill out the revenue, and you need to get at least to over a 2. You need to be at more like a 2.5 DLER, assuming that you have a high technician utilization rate, which is another topic that we may or may not get to.
So
Can I
that
throw in
brings up,
one hair?
yeah, go ahead.
Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, I think, Brad, the only thing that I would just advise the group to do is also pay attention to throughput, because I do know there's some operators that will bill for incessant hours, and that's where you'll
Mm-hmm.
actually see, or I've seen like accountants like actually downgrade jobs, because if they're seeing a 4 hour towel bar fix coming in, they're gonna go like, no, 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 that's 2 hours.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so your DLER
Define what
could
you mean
look
by
Yes.
really good.
throughput.
Like either the jobs per day, melds per day is like a good counterbalance to that. Just
Mhm.
as a way to understand throughput is at a reasonable level. And they're both important. The whole thing is you can have one and not billing and not making any money and doing whatever. And you could do the other where you're making tons of money and the investors are all pissed. So I'm just advocating
Well,
for
you think
both.
you have to have both. It's not just, so that's the question I get asked all the time is when can I start hiring my own in-house maintenance technician? And it's not just off of one number. Like it's not just of how many work orders you get a day. It's, are you going to 5 days a week, 21 days a month, 260 days a year, which is working hours and days, be able to fill their time with at least 6.5, 7.5 hours. And if you can't, so you have to measure a couple of different things. It's not just the number of work orders. You could have, if you have 2 work orders a day coming in, you're going to hire somebody. What are they going to do for the rest of the time? Inspections? Do you really have that many? So I think there's a lot that goes into this. It's not, so that DLER is really important. Yes, you have to
100%.
measure, and there's a few things that measure that, especially in maintenance. It's not just, oh, I'll keep them busy for 7.5 hours a day. 7 hours a day. I'm like, really think about that. Will you?
And by the way, oh, sorry.
No, I'm done. That was
And
it.
just to tie us back to the core concept of the coordinator having billing, like this is where you find those problems. Like if your DLER is messed up, it's going to show up on the billing that the coordinator will know, or if that amount of hours against that particular thing, like
Right.
talking about this process thing solves what these 2 major metrics or these major, balancing metrics should catch that you shouldn't find in your reporting a month or 2 months from now. That coordinator, when doing the billing for that one particular job before it's handed over to accounting, should catch 4 hours for a towel bar is insane. I got a problem with somebody.
Yes.
And all of this is a lot of work.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if I could add one thing that I think I missed on that checklist, it would just be called the stupid box. Like maybe the first thing on there is this stupid? Is this work order stupid? Is this a 4-hour work order for a towel? If yes,
I literally want you to give your talk on MX Summit. Literally, I want it called the stupid box.
We can put out a volume 2.
I'm not kidding, Brad. This is awesome.
Does this make sense? If yes, proceed. If no, return.
With a little tagline, you can't fix stupid.
So
there's nothing like sending, and I've done this. I've done the 2.5-hour light bulb change work order, and I've fielded a call from an owner, and I've had to explain what happened. And it's like, just because that happened doesn't mean that you have the I don't know, the right. Sure, you have the right to, but like, should you send that invoice? No.
So I think that goes back to your whole DLER conversation, because to your point, if you see this constant happening, that's a whole nother problem. What that tells me is I've got a really inexperienced technician. Like if it takes them 4 hours to do a towel bar and they're doing 3, maybe if I'm lucky, three work orders a day, I've got a bigger problem. So that tells me that they may not have the experience. Like there's a lot of other things that come from that. Because if that's a constant that's happening, that's something, and you're right. You probably have to be careful of what you're charging but still charge something. And yeah, you're going to have to eat it until you solve that problem. And some people don't solve that problem. They let it go. I can't find another maintenance. This is the only guy I could find, and it's better than nothing. And I'm like, okay, it's still costing you money. Go for it.
Mm-hmm.
So totally. I want Brad to go into his checklist, but really quick before that, because I feel like we're kind of touching on some great things, DLER, technician utilization rate, jobs per day. What are a few other key metrics that you think operators should be tracking related to keeping a health check on maintenance billing before we go into that kind of 4-step checklist?
Sure. I'll offer a few things. First one is just conceptual. You guys may not be surprised by this, but not a lot of property managers are analyzing let's just assume in-house maintenance for the moment. Not a lot of property managers are analyzing in-house maintenance against and separate from their property management company. We've got a lot of overlap wrapped into one P&L. And almost every time that there is a wrap in, you've got those are separate companies, even if they're legally not. They need to be looked at as such because they're separate businesses, separate monetization models, separate profit models, forecasts, all of that. Usually someone's covering for
Great.
somebody else. If you find a 10% blended company, like, and it's a coin flip on if it's maintenance or PM, because some people live for maintenance and they add doors so that they can make maintenance money. Like, you're probably a decent chance that you've got a 20% maintenance company, 0% PM company, or the other way around. So first of all, conceptually is before you start tracking KPIs, make sure that you're tracking profitability separately and you have a good understanding of the margin and the annual profitability of your maintenance company. So that's first, like do
I
that
think that's
first.
like period. That's number one. That was
Yeah, if that's the only thing
amazing.
you do.
100% agree.
Yeah, then you're in a decent spot because at least you can see, do I have a red light, green light, or yellow light? Do I
Exactly.
have negative profitability, common? Do I
And
have
by the
low
way,
profitability?
that feeds into like the valuation of a company, because if, let's say, they want to sell
Yeah,
and they're thinking, oh, and they blend it, it actually makes it difficult because buyers aren't looking for that blended number. They want to know separately, well, what are you doing in maintenance separately from property management? To your point, I love that. Like, track it separately, even if it's the same company. I 100% agree
yeah.
with that.
Can I go off just for a moment and ask
Mhm.
Deb? Just, I've actually been curious about this. You do more seller due diligence
Yeah.
and M&A stuff than I do. How do acquirers, I know this isn't the topic today, but everyone will find it interesting. Just trust me. How do acquirers think about maintenance revenue, maintenance profitability when they
Uh,
are assessing a PM company purchase?
So they just, for the most part, disregard it unless it is a recurring, unless it's recurring monthly income that's coming in. So they're charging some sort of a maintenance plan for that property that
Mm,
they're managing. But if it's, because if you think about it, if you have a property, one property might generate 5 work orders in a month, or in a month, or in a year, and another one will, only, it might generate more. So it's a variable that they look at. The only way that they consider it as something, if they can take on that much maintenance and continue that pattern, is if there's a 3-year pattern of consistency. So if you're generating $600,000 in revenue from maintenance every year for the last 3 years, they'll consider that. But they don't, it's not like a focus on the entire valuation. It plays a part, but it's not, it's really the book of business that they're buying, and maybe essentially the company, the domain, et cetera. But for the most part, they're looking at the book of business folded into what they're already doing.
okay.
I'm gonna go back, Brad. I'm gonna throw a turd in the punch bowl here real quick. Um, I actually do see operators that are forecasting maintenance revenue based on generation. If you have enough of a portfolio size and seasonality, I've
Oh,
actually
totally.
seen it. And if we actually do get good at this, you are forecasting money ahead, which I think will start opening up operations to like have better valuations on it. Like, so
Mm,
I do think as an industry we have to. But the thing I want to go back to, both of which you guys were talking about on the separating the finances and everything, from the maintenance company. This comes back to that process and cutting off the ownership to me. It feels like, because who are you going to go chew out if the maintenance profitability stinks? The accountant? Or are you going to go chew out the maintenance department head?
inspector. Yeah.
Right. And so it really comes back to really validating. That's the ultimate scorecard. And it really puts more ownership back in the coordination department to really have that billing on lockdown. Because at the end of the day, like, they're the ones who are in control of what that P&L looks like. And if you
Yeah.
don't have that ownership earlier, it's like you're splitting P&Ls just to understand your own business instead of saying, no, your job is to make it better. Why does that stink? And you got to be able to point to one person.
Mhm.
But anyways, I was just going to kind of bring it back to the process stuff. So
But I also want to go back to Brad's question that was kind of off topic. I think as well, Brad, I what I see a lot of acquirers do, or buyers who are looking, is that they really scrutinize the number. So they want to make sure that that fee structure, whatever it is defensible. So if they're going to absorb this into their company and grandfather it in, they're looking at, can I continue this? And is this make sense? Is the markup consistent? So what we were talking about earlier, if you've forgiven it sometimes and you did it so that's going to be important. Are you marking up? Is it applied uniformly? Does it vary by owner, right? Are there exceptions made? Is it recurring or is it versus one time? That's going to play a big part. And then it's really the margin on the maintenance. It's not just the revenue, right? So the markup barely covers that labor cost of coordinating it. I think acquirers just treat that revenue as almost like a wash. It's like, it's not a value driver.
Yeah,
I think
that makes sense.
if we played a drinking game every time someone said I want to go back to on this webinar, we'd have some fun. But I do want to really jump into the white paper, specifically those 4 layers of invoice readiness. And then Ray, I know you had a couple things you wanted to show before we wrap here. So I'm going to just share my screen so everyone can see what we're talking about and have Brad kind of walk through this pre-flight brief.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'll try to be brief with my brief here. So the whole point of this exercise for me was I made this point earlier. How can I help accounting departments not be investigative journalists and instead be, as much as possible, box checkers, process people? There is a time and a place for accounting to do kind of high level work, but maintenance billing is just not one of them. This is a place where they should be taking these in, they should be verifying them, these work orders, they should be paying them, they should be closing them out, and then moving on to the next one. So the whole point was, how do we avoid accountants going off on a wild goose chase? And so there's 4 layers here. There's the permission layer. There's just kind of like the most obvious stuff, right? The invoice amount is at or below the not to exceed limit. Like we haven't done an exception. If we have done an exception, there's documented over owner approval, time, date, method of communication. So right away, accounting knows I can pay this because I'm contractually able to pay this, or I can pay this because I've been given permission to pay this. And then before they move on, is there enough money in the bank? Are there funds for this? Do I have to request funds, etc.? So that's the permission layer. The accuracy layer, just what it sounds like. Is it accurate? Are there any duplicates? Is the actual cost close to the estimate, to some degree? And then you could put this in permission as well. I put it in accuracy just so that I had 3 things in each bucket. But COI and W-9, are they current and on file? If you have, a software worth its salt here, then you've got a method of making sure that process is automated, that you always have updated W-9 and COI. So permission, accuracy, documentation. This is the big part for the technician or for the maintenance coordinator. You've got a summary note of what was found up front. You've got before and after photos, hopefully. And then you have the original vendor invoice attached as a reference document. So before any markup, before any invoice goes out from the PM company, you're checking the original data to make sure that the original data is sufficient for this to be defensible. And then finally, the accounting side, this is the accountant's job. Correct GL code, distinguishing service requests from turnover, CapEx, things like that. Markup is documented separately from the pass-through vendor cost. And then the final one is the invoice description is written in plain language appropriate for an owner statement. So an owner doesn't have to say, what's this 4511-INV00126? It's like, no, toilet broke. Here's what we found. Here's what we did. It's fixed. Please pay. So that is, most of that can be automated. Most of that is the maintenance coordinator's job. And so when it gets to the desk of the accountant, they should be able to very quickly go through those things. And I think you can do, I'm not entirely sure how exactly Property Meld could assist with this, or if you would use some sort of AI automation to do this. But I also just kind of threw in the white paper hey, what about a green, yellow, red? Just, you've got this green light. Okay, all of these things are present. Like we verified all of these things are at least present. Quick review, pay it. yellow light, there's something that needs to be, oh yeah, there it is. Slight cost variance, missing a photo. The accountant should review it before just paying it. And then red light, obvious miss, right? Over not to exceed and no approval documented, no original invoice found, no receipts uploaded, whatever it is. That's just like, no, it goes straight back. This is insufficient. You need to fix it. So all of this probably sounds like a lot of work, but this is the sort of thing that if you set it up well and you have a really good maintenance process here and you automate this as much as you can, you will probably generate substantially more revenue with a much higher customer satisfaction rate because you're not going to be sending out incomplete things or paying incomplete bills. I rest my case.
Felt like a mic drop.
Awesome.
Nobody really could have a conversation after that. It's like, well,
I felt like that was, the whole white paper is not like, I don't want to be like, it's so great, I wrote it, but it really is super awesome. But I think that part was like the real takeaway that struck me, like, this is a complex topic, and that was really like connected those dots in a really easy to understand way.
Good.
yeah,
Good deal.
it is a great white paper, Molly. I know you had
Thanks.
really smart people helping out, but it is a really good white paper. And I think the biggest thing for me is it's about understanding clear lines of ownership and understanding the impact that that ownership can have on the business from the investor relationships or whatever. And it needs to quit being mushy with just accountants kind of owning it because they're the
Good.
stopgap. And
Yeah.
to me, that whole thing goes, how can I go from kind of that mushy thing to what is a very clear line and what processes do I need to implement? And they don't seem that hard, but they seem like super high upside from a profitability and investor relationships. Like, I think that whole white paper was very simple when I went through it. It was really great. And I appreciate Deb and Brad and the property management professionals that contributed to it. It was super
Yeah.
fantastic.
I think Charles is actually on the webinar. He was also super impactful in creating this as well. But,
Thanks, Charles.
yes, speaking of, the name of this white paper is The True Cost of Maintenance Billing. And so, hey, everyone, thanks for popping in. So, wanted to have Ray kind of talk a little bit to some of the things that we've been working on to aid in this complex process. And then we do have a question in the Q&A that I want to get to before we wrap.
Awesome. Well, I'll be very brief. I don't want to like spend too much. I want to talk about really there's parts in here, and Deb said it right when she's like it starts at intake, which I am a huge believer in. That is the start of information of what something should be. There's kind of two avenues we're really tackling true cost on as a business and as somebody who's trying to help lead in the property management space. And one of them is our operators and coordinators should know what things should cost and how long they should take. That is one of our biggest problems in the industry. So one of the things that we've really started to do and lean in on is utilizing our AI. There's some really clever proprietary stuff we do that anything that Max intakes can actually predict what some of these costs should be before even dispatching, which is really cool because we think about the waste. The whole thing is trying to eliminate it and not sit there and do things that we got to apologize to an investor later. Literally had somebody visiting the office yesterday that says they'll send somebody out, then they'll come and tell me that they need to go and send out a different vendor, and then they'll charge me for their time. That's the sort of waste that should start be disappearing. So true cost is about finding where this waste is and what people can do. And so being able to estimate costs is really important. And so we have some ways that we're equipping coordinators to better do some of this as well. Now, talking about that ownership component, one of the things that we believe is the coordinator should be the one owning that bill creation and double checking everything that Brad and Deb kind of listed out in their processes there is really about the coordinator should be doing that, not the accountant. And so if you think about something, a service issue, you've got costs from receipts, you got work logs, hours attributed from an internal technician. I didn't use a vended invoice one on this particular one. That end of the coordinator's job is creating the bill. And so we launched True Cost in here to where it either will launch off an estimate that you gave and allow you to do it, or you can actually look in and create the bill right from scratch there. Now, I did this janky thing. Obviously, I've got some things to do here. I just threw in kind of this idea of labor rates, obviously, but the idea that a coordinator should be validating that 4-hour towel bar maybe is a little unnecessary. Or I did this work. Where are my hours? I don't see them. And by the way, the joke is this is a receipt from Valentine's Day, so that's why you see floral and tax. And it's itemized. But the idea behind it is being able to see what margin on the job that you're looking at, that coordinator has really taken a look at that and validated it and created a bill that they can be confident in, that they're getting their appropriate markups in there, that they're making sure all those costs are captured. And I really like the plain language thing, Brad. I know I wrote that in the comments. But it should be a great, and I didn't put a lot of things here. When it goes over to accounting, it should be ready to go. And this is the part where that coordinator should take ownership. So we've really leaned into this thought process of this needs to be here. Our goal is to keep bringing more intelligence to this particular process. We have some super cool things coming out in Q3. That AI with the data can really even juice this stuff up. But we have to start with there's an optimal process, which is the coordinator, the job's not done until it's billed, whether it's a vended or it's technician hours. Because if not, we hear of all the bad stuff that we just talked about for the last hour. So I didn't want to belabor too much of it, but I wanted to show a little bit of that stuff here that is now in Property Meld. And there's some really cool things that happen, creates the bill over there in the tool, in the systems. And that way you can kind of separate corporate accounting from what is needing to be paid.
Love it. That's awesome.
Awesome. Very cool. So Michelle had a question. Deb kind of answered it in the chat, but how many of you get pushback from vendors that allocating their resource invoices per punch list item with labor and materials and action taken that they state it is not realistic and tracking time spent on tasks will result in higher fees? I think this should be standard when invoicing so we can defend invoices instead of trying to allocate the vendor's time from a lump sum invoice.
One thing I was going to say that I kind of didn't is it's not, this isn't, I mean, don't waver if you're asking for itemization and your vendor isn't, don't waver from that if that's your policy. And it really sounds like it's a vendor management issue, which is not your problem. This is why, I find that vendors tend to be terrible bookkeepers and invoice late is because that's not their strength. They're great at what they do, HVAC, plumbing, electrical. What they're not great at doing is the invoicing and probably itemizing it down because they're in the field just quickly doing the repair, not probably writing everything out. So we're asking them to do that sometimes days later when they're sitting down finally to create the invoice, sometimes months later, it's not going to be itemized. So this needs to be part of your vendor agreement. Like, Brad mentioned it earlier, like, do you require photos before and after? Like, what are you requiring of your vendors and stick to that? The more you start forgiving them of letting them do this, it will balloon and get out of control. That's where that true cost, I mean, Ray went into it, but that true cost I love that feature. I think it's going to be a game changer on what it is allowed. Like now you have an idea of, okay, this is what it really should cost, but you're charging me like what is really going on here. So question it, because if you are, guaranteed your owners are.
I'll just throw out, like, we've got over 60,000. I don't know how many vendors on our platform. I think Deb is right. Like, you set that expectation, but I do know property management companies that have super high SLAs, and that means their vendor pool gets really small and they're really expensive too. So just making sure that you kind of balance that into your strategy. Trying to get vendors to participate in general in anything can be teeth pulling.
Well, and the only reason why they don't, and the reason why they push back is because they're not organized. So when they feel like they're having to told, oh, well, you must upload your invoice and it must include this. They're like, I'm just a mom and pop shop here giving you a great deal. This is a lot of work for me. So we have to figure out how that's going to work because we want to work with them. But, how do we make this a win-win? And there is a way to do it. We want to spend the time to do it. I think once they start doing it, it's actually not that hard. It's just, it feels hard at first.
I do wonder at some point, and not just to like a look ahead, but how much is some of that going to go away eventually if you know the work that's been done to be we should be able to test out. is that the right price or not? And you just need third-party
Right.
data to go and tell the investor, and then you don't have to go and reverse engineer their business like the accountants do the coordinators do it to the vendors. Like it's like, that's right in line against the work, and data says it.
One thing I always say is that we are literally giving vendors work for free, meaning they didn't have to go market to us to give it to them. So we're handing them money, essentially. I'm giving you a work order. You can go do it, and then I'm paying you to do this. And you didn't have to average, like, and sometimes it's hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And if you don't want to follow a few requirements, I'll go find somebody else that will. And by the way, that $100,000+ is going away too. So look at it from that angle as well. Like, how much are you paying? Like, take your top few, 5 vendors. How much are you paying them? And can they follow your process? And if they refuse, find somebody who will, because that is like, they did nothing to market for that. I am giving them. It just boggles my mind how we just sometimes cave in to a vendor and letting them kind of dictate, when I'm like, we're the ones who have to answer to the owners. So it's really problematic. This domino effect.
For sure.
Wonderful. Well, I feel like we could have a whole series on this based on all the information everyone shared. It's definitely, like we said at the beginning, kind of an underserved area of the process. But I just wanted to give a huge thank you again to Brad and Deb for helping us co-author this white paper. Charles, thank you for providing your experience as an operator. And thank you for joining us today. I do have to say that if you enjoyed this conversation, like Brad said, Deb and him have both been at MX Summit in the past. Brad can't make it this year. Oh, yes, thank you. Janie was also a huge help in co-authoring this white paper. But these conversations and so much more will be continued at MX Summit. So I'm going to throw the link
Brad,
in.
I'm disappointed. I was really looking for the stupid box.
No stupid box. I have our 4th child is due 1 week after the summit. So me being in Rapid City when the baby comes, not a good idea. Not a good idea.
Why? It's just a hop, skip, and a jump away now for you.
Doesn't sound like you believe in what you're doing, Brad. Very loose
Right.
beliefs.
Oh, wow.
Listen, if it was our first,
Totally
I would
kidding. You
understand.
should care about your marriage. Yeah, this beautiful
You know what to
baby
do.
child.
You'll be fine. I'll be back. But it was
All right. I got to bounce off. Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
See you guys. See you later.
Bye.